Hello and welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today we are speaking with Angela Stubbs. She is a writer, publicist, and founder of Pitch Perfect Media, which is a boutique PR and events agency known for building meaningful conversations around health, wellness, and women's advocacy in the workplace. With a professional background that bridges the entertainment industry and health marketing, Angela spent years leading creative campaigns before stepping into the wellness space, where her voice has become a trusted guide for companies navigating how to support women through menopause, autoimmune challenges, and beyond. As the former head of PR for a national menopause telehealth company, Angela led corporate wellness education programs, moderated expert led events, and helped launch both virtual and in person activations that tackled the very real impacts of perimenopause on productivity, mental health, and career trajectory. Her work focused on helping companies understand not just the why, but the how, offering actionable, compassionate strategies for creating supportive workplace cultures. Angela's expertise is informed by lived experience. She has managed autoimmune disease for over 35 years and is currently in perimenopause, giving her unique insight into the symptoms, struggles, and systemic gaps that too often go unaddressed. She speaks fluently on what to look for, what questions to ask, and how to create spaces, both at work and at home, where women feel seen and supported. Angela holds dual MFAs in poetry and fiction from NYU's creative writing program and Naropa University's Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics, bringing both analytical rigor and lyrical sensitivity to everything she does. This conversation is all about navigating having autoimmune conditions and dealing with perimenopause, menopause symptoms on top of it. This is a conversation that is not talked about enough. And I know many of the women that listen into this podcast are really struggling with both of these things. So when I connected with Angela on this topic, I knew that this was really important to have her on to have this discussion because she's got such expertise specifically in navigating these two things. So, things that we're going to talk about today are what special considerations do women with autoimmune diseases need to consider when learning how to manage their perimenopause symptoms, their hormonal fluctuations. What extra things do we have to think about in regards to hormone replacement therapy? Even things like GLP-1s, which is so popular right now. Well, it's a little bit different when you have autoimmune conditions. So, what other things need to be addressed with doctors? What are red flags to look for when you are trying to talk to your doctors about these things? In other words, if they're being dismissive or if they're telling you certain things that aren't helping you, what to look out for and when to look for another opinion. We're discussing why autoimmune symptoms tend to flare up during this period of our lives because our hormone fluctuations will affect your autoimmune symptoms. And then we also talk about for women that are in the workplace, especially in a corporate office environment, how you should be taken into consideration and given accommodations for these very real life symptoms that you are dealing with and that you shouldn't have to feel like you need to hide and just push on through when you're really struggling with perimenopause symptoms, in addition to your autoimmune symptoms. So, how to basically go about asking for accommodations and standing up for yourself, both in the doctor's office, but also in the workplace and even at home. So, I hope that you listen into this because even if you're not in the situation yet, if you're still having your normal cycle, hormones do affect at all different points in our life our autoimmune conditions. And it's also good to prepare yourself now for the things that you may have to manage in the future. So, again, this is such a valuable conversation. Let's now dive in to this conversation with Angela. Angela Stubbs, welcome. I see your kitty in the background. I'm so happy that he or she is on as well.
He is on. That's baby dinosaur, yes.
Oh, baby dinosaur. So anybody watching on YouTube can see baby dinosaur. Angela, we kind of put this together. Funny enough, you were pitching me on somebody else to be on my podcast, and I was asking questions, and you were like, actually, I'm probably more qualified to talk about this than this particular guest would be. So we got to chatting, and now you're here, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
And obviously my cat is wanting to definitely join in. He's like, me too. Also, I have things to say about autoimmune. Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. And you kind of caught me on a rare day, I think, when we were having those exchanges, because my job is to promote my clients. And as the conversation was unfolding, I thought, I'm really well versed in this. I say used to. I do this for a living, and have been doing things like this for quite some time. And I thought, public speaking is something I'm very used to. And, I've had an autoimmune disease for more years of my life that I've been on the planet than not. And I'm also in perimenopause. So I thought, I'm pretty sure that I could probably speak to this. So thank you for encouraging me and asking me, because yeah, it's probably not something that would have normally happened, but here we are.
So, well, it was meant to be, and we're in the same boat. We're both autoimmune, we're both in perimenopause, and it came more to my awareness over the last year of like, I thought my autoimmune symptoms were flaring up and I couldn't really figure out why. And I was like, actually, I think this is hormonal, not necessarily autoimmune, or, it's sort of triggering some autoimmune symptoms, even though my autoimmune is pretty well under control. And yeah, we got onto that conversation, and you mentioned that you worked in a company that specifically educated around this topic. So,
Yeah.
how has your experience been, being that you are autoimmune and going through perimenopause? Like, what have your struggles been?
Well, I think a big part of the struggle of having an autoimmune disease and then trying to navigate perimenopause is the sheer fact of being a woman. And even if you don't have or even if you don't have an autoimmune disease, I think it's the natural inclination is to doubt what you're feeling and try to find some other way to go about it, like some other way to understand what's happening, as opposed to just honoring, like, I have XYZ symptoms. We sort of go like, oh, it must be this, it must be that. And we have a real good intuitive system that is in our body that alerts us when there are things that are off. And I think for whatever reason, over the years, we've become used to silencing that part of ourselves that says like, hey, something's off, or hey, this might be this. It's like, oh, it's probably XYZ. Instead of going, hey, hold on a sec, let's investigate this further. And I know for myself, the feeling of, I mean, when you have an autoimmune disease, you're used to dealing with a lot of symptoms, some of them overwhelming all at the same time. The idea of a new thing coming in is like, I don't have the bandwidth for any more things to come in. Like, no more new symptoms, no more recurring symptoms that were in remission, none of it. Right. So for me personally, the second that something sort of like pipes up, I kind of do this, like, nope, I'm not like, like, I don't see you, I don't hear you kind of a thing. Like, nope, no, 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 no. So there's a little bit of a denial piece for me that happens because I'm so resistant to entertaining more things that could affect the balance of what I hope is an equilibrium in my autoimmune state. So I think the struggle really for me is the gaslighting of my own my own intuitive guidance and going like, no, no. And then it's even compounded by the fact that when you do go investigate it, say you do go to a doctor and then they tell you like, oh no, your hormone levels are fine. It's nothing. It's whatever the thing is that you end up hearing. then you really start to question your sanity. So I think that was my sort of foray into autoimmune and meets perimenopause. I kind of had this unpleasant moment of a lot of symptoms cropping up for me that I don't currently have at all, and really worrying about what that meant, and spending lots of money going to lots of specialists to figure out what it meant, and only to find out that they all said nothing's wrong with you. And then you think like, well, no, something's really wrong, but no one will validate it. Like, you want a physician to say, yes, here's what's wrong with you. Here's how you fix it. Do this, take this, XYZ, but that doesn't happen. So yeah, I think that for me personally, encountering perimenopausal symptoms that mimicked some autoimmune symptoms and then also activated a whole set of new things sent me off into the weeds. And not in a good way, like not in a, oh, I'm really curious about this. It was more like, I can't deal with this. That was sort of the vibe for me. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that so many women listening to this can relate to everything you just said. And it is overwhelming. It's like, dude, how much more do you expect me to handle? Like, come on, body. Just like, can we get it together? Right.
It's, I think, when you have chronic illness, I think that the normal, your body adapts to the symptoms of whatever your illness or disease is. And we carry it in our bodies just on autopilot, right? So there's this sort of feeling of, like, to somebody else who doesn't have it, they might really feel those things. But for anybody who's been carrying chronic illness for a long time, and the symptoms and the treatments and all the things you have to go through to just live with chronic illness, I think you kind of forget all the things that you're carrying, right, along the way. It's just, you're so accustomed to it. And when perimenopause intersects with autoimmune, like you were saying, sometimes it can heighten those symptoms that are already there, that maybe you're already attempting to control with medication or diet or lifestyle or all those things together. And it might present new symptoms that feel concerning, because naturally, any person who's been dealing with chronic illness goes, oh, I have new symptoms now as part of my disease. Not, oh, I have new symptoms, but it's because of perimenopause. It's because of my hormones shifting. It's because of reproductive. That piece has been, I think, and we've seen in the media, been really backburnered until most of the Gen X ladies decided to say, no one really told us about this. Why don't we know what's happening? How can we have more conversations around this and be more empowered? So I think that's a big piece too, is like this curiosity around, not just taking face value what people tell us, and really asking questions, not just about our diseases, but really about what's happening in our bodies. And certainly that conversation around perimenopause has been missing for a really long time, until the last year or two, maybe 3. But yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why haven't we been talking about this? Why is there so much information missing in this huge section of women's lives?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I mean, in the menopause world, back I think it's almost 20 years ago, there was the Women's Health Initiative study that released a lot of information about a hormone replacement therapy that said all doctors and patients running for the hills, because basically, in a nutshell, it sort of said it wasn't safe to take. And if you took it, you might be getting cancer. And so naturally, physicians weren't prescribing it. People weren't taking it. Women were suffering. I mean, my mother is 75, 6 years old. I think I remember her going through perimenopause, but there was no conversation around it. And it certainly isn't like it is today, where everybody sort of speaks very openly now, a little more about what they might be experiencing, how they might be feeling. So for me, I think thinking about how the narrative is changing, I think has really come from a place of all the Gen X who are now entering into perimenopause are having symptoms, but we're now saying like, okay, well, how come no one said this before? Now we're understanding, like, doctors didn't want to have those conversations, or they were avoiding it, or they were afraid for their own malpractice or things that might affect their livelihood, they weren't willing to prescribe or they didn't feel it was safe to prescribe. And obviously, since then, they've sort of walked back some of that information that was released. And they're now saying, okay, actually, let us course correct. Let us share what's actually factual. So we do know now that, bioidentical hormones are safe to take. Obviously, there are people with certain comorbidities that it's not okay, where it's not safe for you. And usually, hopefully, you have a physician that you're working with that can identify whether or not that's you. And, the other piece is I think a lot of people make the assumption that I know I was guilty of this. My mother had breast cancer. So I assumed that if I took hormones, I would also get breast cancer. So I'm not taking it, which means you just have to deal. And that's not true. It's not true either. I mean, certainly you do have to investigate those things for yourself, but just because you have a family member who's had cancer doesn't it doesn't mean that you can't take HRT, but there certainly are specific questions to be had and asked and answered. But yeah, the Women's Health Initiative, I think, is the main culprit, I would say, for the downfall of physicians being afraid to prescribe and then people being just on autopilot, like not being able to take any hormones or really having a hard time getting them prescribed because people were too afraid to prescribe them. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think people are still iffy and wondering about it, although I know many women that are taking them with great success.
Yep.
And of course, there's so much other lifestyle stuff that can go on that we can do to support, right? Our hormones and the fluctuations and everything from fasting to what we are eating to our sleep cycle, alcohol consumption, all these different things that are just lifestyle based.
Right.
We can address those. And I hope that the women listening to this program are open to that discussion as well.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to dive in even more about how to address this with practitioners, with your doctors, because you said earlier that you find that your biggest thing here is gaslighting yourself first. So we get over that part, and I think that that's so common, by the way. It's just so ingrained in us. But we get over that part. We get to the doctor finally. We're trying to ask questions. We're trying to investigate this, and we at worst get gaslit, at best get dismissed, or are just told, "Oh, your labs are normal. Everything's fine." Like, how do we navigate that? What are good questions that we can ask to our practitioners to help them help us?
Well, I think, there's a couple ways to answer this question. And I think first and foremost, it really lies on the patient to ask the hard questions and to, I hate to say it, but we have to really be resourceful. It isn't just, at least I used to feel this way. You would just go to your doctor and trust that they were going to tell you what you needed to know. And you would just take whatever they said and be like, okay, well, my doctor said XYZ, so that's what I'm doing. And that's the end of it.
Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Not all doctors, sadly, are going to care about you in the way that you care about yourself, right? That you should, and to the level with which you should be investigating the information that's being given to you. Now, I'm really lucky because my OBGYN in Santa Monica is brilliant. I love her. She is amazing, and she retired in 2019. So there was a brief minute where I didn't have her, and I kind of had a slow meltdown because the reason I really love her, well, there are many reasons I love her, but one of the reasons is I love anybody who's real smart. And she is obviously a highly intelligent person, but not just as an OB-GYN. She's definitely someone who knows about autoimmune. I trust her. Like, she cares more about my bones than I care about my bones. Right. And because of my autoimmune, and I'm sure this is true for lots of people with autoimmune, just as a sidebar, you have to care about your bone health, because if you've ever taken steroids for any of your autoimmune symptoms, it compromises your bones, right? And maybe not when you first start taking it, but the long haul with chronic illness, if you're taking any kind of steroid, it is going to compromise your bones. So, I'm 50, but when I started taking, and I took it for 2 years, maybe, steroids, and it wasn't even prednisone. It was like a budesonide, which was supposed to be the lesser of the steroid evils. I still have osteopenia and osteoporosis in my hip and my spine. So, like, I already have old lady bones, right? And I'm not old. However, your bones are going to get, as we age, progressively more susceptible to breaking. And so having someone who really cares about your bone health is crucial, but it also takes somebody to understand, not just, hey, you're in perimenopause, you should get on a Fosamax or on a Boniva or one of the meds that you can take to help your bones. It's really about having the wherewithal to do like long-term care for your bones, doing the bone density scans, definitely taking a look at what needs to happen with diet, with supplements, those kinds of things. So I think one of the key pieces of asking questions of your doctor is really taking inventory of what you're experiencing. And when you go to your physician, if you are met with anything other than like, let's investigate this together, the first step should be a doctor who listens and takes your concerns seriously and doesn't sort of poo-poo them. Um, that's number one. If you go in and explain you're having whatever your symptoms are, and somebody tells you, oh, that's just life, or that's just aging, or that's just this or that, immediate red flag, look for another doctor. Because those physicians are not going to typically change their stance no matter what you come in with. And also, we do know that sometimes, we know our bodies. So you could get a lab panel. Labs could come back that your hormones aren't that off. But meanwhile, you're having night sweats, or meanwhile, you're having brain fog, or you're having heavy periods and you're missing, months at a time, and someone's telling you, oh, no, it's normal, it's fine. Again, look for other doctors, just the way that you would with, I think about this too, with autoimmune. If I have a physician that I feel isn't listening to me and I'm suffering, I'm going to find somebody else, because we're the only ones living in our bodies, right? So there's no reason for you to suffer. It's just a matter of finding the right people. And even when you've had somebody for years that you think will be the best, if they don't show up for you in a way that feels helpful, just ask more questions and find somebody else, because it makes it so hard when we attach ourselves to our physicians, especially if they aren't helping.
I will apologize ahead of time because they just started tree trimming again. So I hope this doesn't come into the recording. But I think that everything you said is so important. And especially when you said that if that's how the doctor comes in with sort of being dismissive or, oh, that's normal, trust your gut. You know what's normal for you. You know that you aren't feeling normal, and find somebody that is going to listen. I was also going to say that just because something is common
Right.
doesn't mean it's normal. So, yes, I know multiple women in my friend group in this age group who are all having perimenopause symptoms. Some are having brain fog, some are having body aches, and a whole range of symptoms across the board.
Right.
It's common, but that doesn't mean that it's normal, and that doesn't mean that you just have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
We can still investigate this. We can find supportive practitioners and doctors that can help us with this, and we can normalize your body functioning.
That's right. One of the other things I just want to add as a side note on this topic, because the good news is we're getting a lot of There's a lot of noise on menopause on social media. You see it all over TikTok and all over Instagram, and now everybody's an expert, right? Caution. Everybody's not an expert. Everybody is not a physician. There are a lot of people out there who have done their research, who do know what they're talking about, and that is good. We like people who do research. We like people who are educated. And one of the big things that, one of the things that I'm interested in and trying to understand for me, and this is sort of specific to autoimmune, and for those of you, if you have a bowel disease related autoimmune, and I'm not sure yet how that affects other people with similar autoimmune things, but this is a GLP-1 issue. So weight loss, as we know, is a really important part for most women who enter into perimenopause. When I worked at a menopause telehealth company for about 3 years, the one thing at the top of the list for women everywhere that was the most important thing that they wanted to get rid of was their weight gain. Like, women were saying, "I don't care about the night sweats, the hot flashes, the, like, acne, the anxiety. Just help me get these 20 pounds off." Like, I don't wanna be fat, right? Which is a whole separate issue because, like, why are we fat shaming ourselves? But anyways, yes, no one likes to gain 20 pounds out of nowhere for doing the same thing you've always been doing. It's horrible, makes us feel worse about ourselves on top of dealing with all the other things. And the GLP-1 topic, microdosing peptides can be really helpful to lose weight. I think there's a lot of validity in that path for some people. 1,000%. I think it's safe to do if you're doing it with a physician who is watching what's happening. I do think there's a lot of danger for people who overprescribe and don't monitor and those kinds of things. And hopefully people with autoimmune are going to be extra careful if you're investigating that path. But for me, one of my big concerns is the functionality of GLP-1s is to slow down the body's digestion, right? It helps you to feel fuller. However, motility with bowel disease is important. And so one of the things that you have to be really mindful of on a GLP-1 if you're going to take a microdose, if you have autoimmune, is get with somebody who understands bowel disease, because you will end up with ileus. You could end up in the emergency room with a bowel obstruction. You have to be really careful about taking that, because also if you have bowel disease, you deal with dehydration more, because if you're missing like your large intestine or small intestine or, parts of your intestine, the way your body absorbs things is different. It's not just like some other person who wants to take a GLP-1. You have other things to contend with that aren't just like all the people on Instagram who are like, "Hey, take this GLP-1. It's going to help you lose weight." Yes, it will. And also, it could potentially cause you other problems, so you you might lose weight, but you might be in the ER. So, just like, I have to tell myself this too, because who doesn't want to like have a quick fix for their problem? And I shouldn't say quick fix because that's probably not exactly the right thing, but we know that it will help you do the thing that you're wanting, which is lose weight in a way that other things that you maybe have tried up to this point haven't been successful at. You haven't been able to have the outcome you want. Let's put it that way. But I think, taking a GLP-1 also has to come with the nutrition piece and the weightlifting and the protein and all of that. It has to all go together. You can't just tick the box of GLP-1. But I just want to bring it up because right now I know every day that I open up social media, I'm just inundated with GLP-1 peptides, and take them. It's healthy. It's good for you. It's easy. Da, da, da. And I'm again 1,000% for it, as long as people, especially with autoimmune, are going to their doctors, whether that's your IBD doctor, your rheumatologist, or whomever you're seeing, whatever your thing is. Please, please, please ask questions as it pertains to your disease if you're going to take a GLP-1. That's my TED talk on that topic.
No, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I'm seeing ads for it every time I scroll through Instagram or Facebook. It's insane. It's crazy to me that it's being pushed so hard. And like you said, I think there's some good reason for it. However, we have to understand that when we have an autoimmune condition, And we are also in perimenopause, that's just an extra thing on top of it. We have to be, we're not the normal standard case,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we have to ask more questions. We have to do our due diligence on top of what the practitioners are telling us.
Yep.
And one resource that I found very helpful to learn about GLP-1s is Dr. Tina. She's a naturopath out of Oregon, I believe, but she's all over Instagram. I'll put her link in the show notes just in case anybody wants to hear what she has to say about it. I think she has a very well balanced approach to it. And she'll tell you the things that you need to know and the questions you need to ask about it. So I'll put that out there as a good resource for everybody.
Yeah. It's really important because, the thing is, at the end of the day, the conversation around perimenopause in general, I think has arrived on the scene to help women have tools to not suffer, right? This is not a death sentence. This is not suffer until you aren't on the planet anymore. I mean, it is it's your second puberty, if you will. It is the next phase. And I don't think it has to be the phase where it's like everything feels so much harder, and certainly can feel that way when you're already dealing with the autoimmune piece and then your hormones go off the charts. And, it feels very, very overwhelming for a lot of people. And
And I think that's a mindset that we learn too, that we picked up. It doesn't need to be harder. It doesn't need to be this heavy thing. Just like getting older is so hard or things start falling apart. It's like that's the narrative we've been taught, but that doesn't need to be true for us as an individual, right?
well,
And
the narrative you choose for yourself carries weight, right? Our thoughts turn to things. So,
right,
I think we have a lot of power in the way that we think about things, and the way that we speak about them also affects the outcome.
exactly. But I did just see a really funny Instagram reel just a couple days ago that said someone recently told me that they called perimenopause cougar puberty. And now I can't call it anything else. And I thought that was actually quite hilarious. So, hold on to your cougar puberty and just roll with it,
Yeah,
right? Like own it.
I yeah, the part, the things that nobody, people don't up until, I mean, really until I was working at a menopause telehealth company, I had, like most people, sadly, a very limited awareness around what it even meant to be in perimenopause. Forget with an autoimmune disease, but just generally, I only had like your sort of Hallmark greeting card stereotypes of menopausal women, which really included like being, in your 80s and just like old and like, okay, well, that's the end of it for you. I didn't, I really didn't understand. And I'm really grateful that, my job took me down the path of working in women's health and promoting, healthcare for women, and really awareness for women about perimenopause, because like you said, there's a lot of information out there. Not all of it is accurate. And there's a lot to sift through if you don't know who to listen to and what to ask. So yeah, it's important.
And let's talk about feeling supported in like a workplace environment, because I know that that's another area that you've put a lot of time and effort into learning and understanding about what, as women, we go through when we are having menopause symptoms, perimenopause symptoms, autoimmune symptoms
Mhm.
in a workplace, corporate office type environment.
Mhm.
It's it's a touchy subject there because you don't want to show weakness, but
Mhm.
you also might not be able to go about your daily workflow in the same way that somebody without these symptoms can handle. And so
Mhm.
how do you have that conversation with, your coworkers, your bosses? What do you do if you're not supported?
Well, I think first and foremost, my work around menopause at work was really around helping employers be educated about why they need to support women in the workspace, right? Because I'd like to think that we live in a world where men and or women are whoever's employing you, whatever their gender is or isn't, feel compelled to support women at work who are going through perimenopause and menopause. But the fact of the matter is that it's usually not the case. And the reason for that kind of boils down to finances, if we're being honest. And one of the things that I found really interesting was businesses and companies start to listen when you help them understand how not supporting women at work affects their bottom line. The amount of money that businesses lose by not supporting women at work in menopause is in the billions annually. The numbers are staggering. The data definitely suggests that when women are in perimenopause and menopause at work, whatever structures are in place at work start to, I don't say that they're crumbling, but I definitely feel like, whatever's in place at a workplace when it comes to, women in high positions who start going through these things, if they can't come to work, there's increased absenteeism, there's increased, issue with productivity, because if you're someone who has to still go to an office space and you're not able to work remotely, not to say that even working remotely means you're not going to have your symptoms, you still will be compromised at home.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode.
That there's not an accommodation for that, and to not feel like if you are in a workplace where, say, you are having hot flashes and you are someone who has to give meetings to a board of directors, or you have to be in front of people where you're like just sweating to death, and it's, certainly something that feels private. Like, I think for those of us with autoimmune, we can also probably understand this from a slightly different perspective, which is any job I've ever had, I don't usually roll in there with, "Hi, I have Crohn's disease. I've had, XYZ problems and 54 surgeries." Like, that's not need to know information, right? That's, if needed, I will share with the appropriate person, maybe, and that's it. So I don't think that menopause is any different because it's so personal. So most women, even if you have whoever your boss is, doesn't matter. But certainly if you have a male boss, I would assume that it is incredibly challenging to feel comfortable to walk in and say, "Hey, so here's this," because like you were mentioning, it presents its own set of issues because we don't want to be judged for being honest and sharing that, because we've seen in different, case studies where women are overlooked for promotions, or they get usurped in this way at work where Now that somebody has that information, they kind of just move around that person, assuming that they aren't going to be able to do their job and they're not going to be able to show up in the way that they might have before. And you shouldn't be punished for sharing that information. It's really we want to share it so that we can have the accommodations made to help, whether that's just, for example, asking for, if you are in an office that doesn't have temperature control, that is controlled like on your floor, but not in your office, being able to have a conversation with somebody about adjusting temperature, or having accommodations for taking a time out in your day. I mean, certainly most workplaces are regulated where you can take a break, but if you're someone that's working somewhere that you need to be able to like clock out or have a minute, if you are having a hot flash or you are having heightened anxiety or you're having other things that are happening to you, you want to feel like there are systems in place at work. So what my experience has been is that educating the people making decisions in businesses is really how those changes are being affected. So telling the HR department and the benefits department, here's why it's of value to support your staff. Here are the ways that you can support your staff. Even things as simple as making it available, making HRT available through your wellness wallet or your insurance provider, right? Just knowing that a company cares enough to offer HRT support as like a side value add bonus slash benefit to its employees is motivation enough, right? To say, hey, I might want to work at company A versus company B because this is something they offer. This company doesn't mention it at all. We see fertility benefits in the workplace. We see pet insurance. We see meditation apps. We see all kinds of things, mental health. Menopause health is right up there, right? So trying to encourage businesses to offer these ways to support women is one, but two, also for women to feel safe enough to ask those questions. Some of the things that we've encouraged in the past have been like, if you're a person that works in a corporate culture where you have a Slack channel, maybe starting like a Slack channel that's just for perimenopause within your workplace, or creating a women's group within your workplace to have those conversations, and really going to your HR partner and asking if there are ways that you can create company community or, create culture within the company that will support women. A lot of times, you still might be met with some resistance, but I think asking the questions, because if you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to ask the questions. You have to ask.
I think those are really great points that you mentioned of like starting a group within a support group kind of within the company atmosphere is excellent. Do you have resources for women that might be in one of these larger corporate situations to help them maybe address this to the HR or to the correct office of support to say, hey, I would like to maybe implement some of these things, or hey, have we considered adding these things to our healthcare? Because I know that for myself, I would find this really helpful. Like, how would just an individual employee approach that?
I can create something and put on my website for folks. What I have now is sort of like more for a personal, how are you dealing in your day to day? What should you do for yourself? But as far as the workplace piece goes, usually for me, what my role has been to like be the conduit to go between the employee and the employer, and make that connection to educate HR, educate the benefits department so that they bring in an offering, and usually we do like a PowerPoint presentation to like help them understand what things would be at play for them, how they could best support their employees. But what I could do is definitely add in like a little cheat sheet for, how to address wellness in the workplace with your employer. Like if you have concerns, here are some things that you might feel comfortable saying to them, asking them, because certainly I think there's sort of three things top of mind that come to me, which is, okay, number one, if you work at a place and you don't feel comfortable going to your head of your department or the head of whoever is in charge of decisions that you feel would be the person to talk to, you have to have someone, you have to have a point person that you can go to. One, identify who that person is. Two, once you know who that is, and if you feel like, oh gosh, now that I know who that is, I definitely don't feel comfortable talking to them, then we have to come up with, these are real concerns that have to be taken seriously by companies. So if it's not your HR partner and you don't feel comfortable talking to HR, fair enough. Hopefully there's someone that either you work with or report to that you do feel comfortable speaking to. If that still feels challenging, then, option 3 is sort of just addressing your concerns in writing and it getting addressed within the company without you cherry picking that person. But the first step is just having the conversation around asking, number 1, for if it's personal, here are my concerns. Here's what I need to have to accommodate me. It's the same as, what do they call, ergonomical accommodations for carpal tunnel, or the way that your desk is set up at work, right? They have to set you up so that you aren't essentially setting yourself up for injury at your desk, right? Same. These things are required, but a lot of people won't do them if no one makes a fuss about it, sadly, right? Some people are great about it and they'll hands down take into consideration your requests, but having a list of what would matter to you, my theory is, if it matters to me, it's going to matter to someone else. They might not be speaking up about it, but somebody else somewhere in my company is going to want that thing. Whether that's, whatever the accommodation is. Somebody's going to say, yeah, me too. I would like that also. So just keep in mind that I think a lot of the struggle in this situation comes from feeling like we're not allowed to ask for what we need. And that's just not true. It's just that we're not accustomed to doing it. So making it more normal, just normalizing the behavior of asking for what we need in corporate culture. And if we get met with resistance, figuring out what your step 2 is to push back on that. Because there's no reason why any woman going to work in perimenopause should not be accommodated. And if you aren't, that's a separate issue. Which I'm not really the person to talk to about that part. However, I can definitely put together a list of things that you can ask for and ways that you can ask for what you need, so that it will help you feel a little less intimidated. I personally have no trouble speaking up for myself, but I will say I still feel or have felt uncomfortable sharing things about my health, not menopause, just like my autoimmune. Like, I mostly don't tell people ever. And not because I'm ashamed, right? It's just, I don't think you need to know. And if you need to know, I will tell you. But even then, it's as little info as possible. And it's, again, not because I'm not an open person. And I'm sure it's the same for you. And a lot of other people have autoimmune. I'm a pretty open book. Like, most people who know me, like, there are no limits. Like, I'll tell you whatever. And at the same time, I have learned in a corporate environment that that is not beneficial to me. I'll leave it there. But like,
Yeah.
that's not wise. And I don't like that that's the case, but I would say that a lot of people probably feel that way. So naturally, when you add in perimenopause, and it's one more layer of something that someone may perceive as a limitation, you feel like, yeah, I'm not sharing that either. I'll just skip it. I'll just suffer. But see, that's the whole point, is that we're trying to move away from the suffering. So I'm hoping that, whatever resources we can put together for women to feel empowered to have those conversations, that's great. I think we're just going to have to do it case by case. I mean, it's a big goal to hope that people in our workplaces will take these things seriously, but hopefully the more that businesses realize that they lose money every time they don't help women.
Yeah. And I think this is also a good practice in, as women, we tend to not speak up for ourselves as much. We tend to not ask for help when we need it. And we just put the extra burden on ourselves because it just seems easier. It'll ruffle less feathers. But when you're autoimmune, when you're going through perimenopause and menopause, we need some extra help. And that's okay. And we need to, we might not all be currently in a situation where we are supported in this, but it's something to strive for, is creating a good support system to where we can ask or we can train our family. Like instead of just being the mom or the person in the household who takes all these things on and just okay, I'll do it. No, we can designate.
Yeah.
Can you take the trash out today? Like, I'm exhausted. I mean, just like the littlest things. Start
Sure.
there and learn to speak up for yourself, ask for help, and create a supportive environment because we have to train that in other people.
For
You
sure.
know?
Most certainly do. And I think, just the education piece is really on all of us to be our own advocate. No one's going to show up and save us on this journey called perimenopause. You have to care as much about this as you do your autoimmune. I mean, they're connected, whether you want them to be or not. One affects the other. And some of us it will be only a little, and some of us it might be a lot. Everybody's different. But I think that one of the most important things is pay attention to where you get your information from. Like a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now. I would say I know on my cheat sheet that I have that I shared with you, and I know you'll share it, but I have it on my coffee table. This book, Generation M, Dr. Jessica Shepard. There are a lot of other very good books, but get her book. She's so smart. And she was just on the Mel Robbins podcast. If you haven't listened and you like Mel Robbins, go listen to Mel Robbins and Jessica Shepard. Jessica's a friend of mine, but aside from her being a friend, I'm not just pimping her book because she's my friend. She's actually incredibly intelligent and knows what she's talking about. There's a lot of information in this book that will help you understand your body in addition to what you already understand having autoimmune. It is very, very helpful. It's all the information you need and then some, and there's a lot of additional resources that she offers. I just think that just educate yourself about what is and isn't happening in your body so that you can make the best choices for yourself because you are your own best friend on this journey.
And you mentioned that you have the cheat sheet to help women that are kind of struggling in this area. So I will put that in the show notes. And I really appreciate you offering that because, again, like you said, there's so many information sources out there. It's hard to know where to start and who to trust. And you have a load of great information in there for anybody that's struggling.
Wow.
And I really just thank you for being here and for having this conversation. We need to talk about this more. And so I'm really happy we are able to do that here.
Yeah, definitely. And ladies, ask your workplaces if you want HRT coverage and you don't have it, like just through regular insurance. Ask your businesses ask for what you want. Ask them to offer it. Ask them for a value added service. There are businesses out there, a lot of telehealth spaces are offering it. Hers is offering it, Hers and Hims telemedicine. I know like Evernow and Alloy and all these spaces. Ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to ask. But I just want everybody to feel supported. So yeah.
Angela, thank you so much for joining us.
You.
So I hope that you found this conversation really helpful and relatable if you are in this period of your life. Like I said on the episode, it took me a while to realize that some of the symptoms that were popping up for me are actually from perimenopause symptoms starting versus just, oh my gosh, I'm in an autoimmune flare. What is triggering this? What is going on? I have all these new things to worry about now. Well, no, it's actually just that my hormonal system is going through a change and that is going to affect me on multiple different levels. So, how can I best support myself going through this journey? And that is why I was really happy to have Angela on to get into a deeper conversation about this because there are so many different ways that we can support ourselves through this process. And it really does take a whole body approach, mind, body, and spirit, to be completely honest. I know for myself, I'm just in the beginning stages, but I see many of my friends who are further along in this process than I am, and the symptoms range all across the board. And it's especially for, I think, women that haven't had many health issues leading up to this point, they're completely taken aback. And for, as Angela was saying earlier in the episode, for women who have already been managing autoimmune conditions for so long, it's just like, really? Like, I have to deal with this now too? It's overwhelming. So, Angela has provided a great resource for you that is linked down in the show notes. So, it's just a good one-page guide on how to navigate doctor's visits, the red flags to look for with your doctors and how they respond to you, and several other resources as far as how to track your symptoms and how to have these conversations. And she also listed some really great books that can teach you a lot about your body and what it's going through. And sometimes just the understanding of that takes the fear or the like anxiety around the symptoms away, because we can really appreciate what our body is actually going through and what it's really trying to do for us in this awkward transition phase. So I highly recommend that you download that resource and the resource as well if you are in that corporate environment, and you do want to look for some added support there. That will guide you just on a few short steps of where you can start in navigating that process. So, if this is something that resonated with you, I ask that you please share this with another girlfriend or family member who is going through the same thing, because we need to know that we're not alone in this stuff and we're not crazy and that there is support out there for us. So please, please share this episode with somebody that will benefit from it, and take a moment to give us a like and subscribe if on whatever platform that you're listening to. That really helps the podcast grow. And my goal is to get this podcast in front of as many ears and eyes as possible, because we need to support the other women on this journey. So, thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you again soon on the next episode of the Health Bridge podcast.